For me, Dom, the thing that tweaked me so much about this in the last week or so was, there's one thing, and it bothers me, okay, that people go gutless here because, hey, I got a tough election next year. Andrew put up a few of them, okay? And Democrats are on the list, okay, but mostly Republicans. But when you're retiring, now, Senator Coburn, I'm taking this from the Times, so it's not like I'm breaking news here. He was one of the senators that tried to work out a bipartisan deal. Larry Pratt, we've had him as a guest, the resident nut job that you're going to find when it comes to guns, who told me that he thinks public should be able to buy bazookas, okay? That guy said, wait a minute. Got 3 million people either call or email the office, and all of a sudden he did 180. And he's going away. What you've seen, usually you get bravery from politicians when they're retiring because they don't have another race to run. Explain to me, for me, this is like, paint a yellow stripe down their backs. This is terrible.
It is terrible, but the reality of it is, Richard, because you're leaving the Senate, it doesn't mean that your career is over. And I really believe that these lawmakers are looking out for their own backsides in terms of what they're going to do after they leave the Senate. We've seen a number of senators leave the Senate and go into million-dollar jobs. It doesn't make it right.
They also have other legislation that's going to come up later in the year.
Right.
And who knows what deals got cut for what.
Right.
Andrew, I want to remind our audience, it's not like lawmakers have to just wait for the Newtown families, which went to Capitol Hill, went to their offices, sat down and told them their stories, and they still did what they did. They have to look at one of their own, Gabby Giffords. Now, she wrote an editorial. We've covered some of it in this show a couple weeks ago, but I want to read a couple captions on it, which I think speak to it. Now, remember, this is a congresswoman, or was a congresswoman, from Arizona. Definitely not a state that in our lifetime you're going to see as a blue state here, okay? This is what she had to say in part right after that vote failed. I was elected 6 times to represent Southern Arizona in the state legislature, then in Congress. I know what a complicated issue is. I know what it feels like to take a tough vote. This was neither. These senators made their decision based on political fear and on cold calculations about the money of special interests like the NRA. The senators who voted against background checks failed to do their job. They looked at these most benign and practical solutions offered by moderates from both parties, and then they looked over their shoulder at the powerful, shadowy gun lobby and brought shame on themselves and our government itself by choosing to do nothing. Our democracy's history is littered with names we neither remember nor celebrate, people who stood in the way of progress while protecting the powerful. On Wednesday, a number of senators voted to join that list. I don't think, Andrew, this was as gutsy a vote as a lot of people think. I don't think it was politically fraught with peril as much as people think. I think more people, 91% says something. Pennsylvania says something in those polls. Most people feel the way by a huge majority. They just don't yell and scream about it. To me, I don't think they did the math the right way, and I don't think they listened to the right voices.
Here's the question, and here's the concern. Is it a voting issue? Will it actually push people to the polls? If you're on the pro-gun side, if you're an NRA supporter, if somebody wants to take away any sort of gun rights, you're running to the polls and you're probably voting on that issue as one of your top 1 or 2 issues. If you're a gun control advocate, if you're one of those 90% who wants a background check, yeah, you want a background check, but you might not get driven to the polls just because of that. Maybe the economy, maybe jobs, maybe there's another issue.
This is what I don't know. Why are they thinking about bringing this thing back up? That surprised me almost as much as the vote failing.
Well, I think Bill hit on something that he said, and we've heard from reports of a number of lawmakers who behind the scenes will say, yeah, I kind of wanted to do something on this, but I didn't see the political path to make that happen. And I'm curious, as a guy who consults for Republicans in a fairly blue state, but still with a conservative Republican Party, if you had a Republican who said, I want to support gun control, I'm just afraid that I'm going to, just absolutely get driven into the ground. How do you do it?
Right. Well, one thing which I think is an important point is that a lot of elected officials are more afraid of the special interests than they are of the public, because the public goes on to other issues, they go on to their lives. The special interest never stops.
So how do you turn this into an asset? How do you turn it into that sign of strength?
Repackage it. I know one thing is branding. People call this gun control. That's bad. You got to call this background checks. But more than what you call it, how do you pitch it?
You could do it. You could have a Camp David conference. You could have a come to Jesus moment in a diner with people on both sides. You could spin the story to restart the process. That's not difficult to do. That's easy to do. And then you would time people to come out there in favor of it. You'd have a Republican Republican here, there, 2 days from now. You just time it out and you spin it out in the press
What about
to gain some momentum.
With the family of a gun victim, let's say? I mean, because there's one in every congressional district in this country. You say, you know what, I can't say no to them on this.
But I mean, any official who comes forward is going to pay a price with the NRA right off the bat.
I think they got to get people like cops and generals
Exactly,
and former
cops help a lot.
Former Republicans who retired now or something. You know what I mean? Who don't have to run a race or something. And the same thing with
you get cops, FBI guys, like real people that you admire, tough guys, exactly.
Can it be done in redder states? Can it be done? I mean, we talked about Pennsylvania. Can it happen in? I don't want to say Oklahoma because that's really extreme, but Arizona or New Mexico?
I think so, because when you look at the sheer numbers of the it was 93 to 7, what was it, 92
91.
91 or something to 8, and the rest undecided. When you look at those sheer numbers, if you start that process, the public will step in at some point. I think the background check they could easily get through if they really decide to divide that line.
Do it now, so it's not as close to November, right? Get it out of the way now, so you got a year and a half to talk about other stuff.
Exactly.
So you don't have to get primaried on it, maybe.
Right.
All right. Our debate continues online, everybody, and I want you to sound off. Now, we're asking, if the Senate doesn't pass background checks, in the end, is that going to impact your vote next November? And on the flip side, if they actually do pass something and you are a huge person who believes that it's a slippery slope here and they're marginalized your Second Amendment right, will that impact your vote? I want to know what you folks think, and please just go to both Facebook and Twitter and sound off. All right, still to come on RFL. They say if you can't say something nice about somebody, don't say anything at all. Well, I tried that yesterday, but today's a new day. Whoever the folks are who never ran a politics show know how hard it is to bite our lip, and our good friend Giancarlo was down there yesterday in Dallas, and I let him go on until he said, the poll numbers prove America's coming out behind George W. and his legacy. Well, we're going to talk about that right after this. Stay with us.